Right, thanks for watching another one of our videos. Today we're going to talk specifically about security around Microsoft 365, also known as Office 365 or Microsoft Office 365, and really try and get an understanding of what's built into the software already and what other steps can be taken. So if I just go around who we've got with us today, as always, I've brought together some people from the HPP group. So we have Darren, Jacklin and James Royle, who are two of our account managers at HPP Systems and Cameron Computers respectively. And we have Paul Mayfield, one of our senior install engineers, has been with us a number of years, works on a lot of our bigger projects and our more complex projects, and helps the rest of the install team as well with the strategy around how we put in systems and look after our customers. So I'm going to come to you first, Paul, when we talk about Microsoft 365. So we're going to go into obviously what we potentially need to do with it, but what does the security look like out of the box, and in particular for the areas of Microsoft 365 that people use the most? How does it come when people just get it and don't do anything else?
So out of the box nowadays, really, it's just a blank canvas to do whatever you want with it. There's very little of the security turned on at the very basic level to start with. As everybody's aware, we normally then, as we do a installation process, we turn on those sort of basic functions like the spoof protection, spam protection, bits and pieces. But it's all really sort of down to what licensing model the end user's buying at the time. If they don't buy into say the premium side of it, you don't get all those nice features to do with spam filtering and sort of credential harvesting protection, fish threat, and all the other niceties that come with it. So out of the box, it comes with just the basic functions, a bit like you can do spoof protection and bits and pieces like that, but it's quite limited if you just get, for instance, like just an email only plan.
Okay. And James, just for those people that are probably aware of the name Microsoft 365 or Office 365, what are most businesses using it for? I mean, is there data in there that needs to be protected, or is it a case of being more of a functionality and productivity tool nowadays?
Well, the Office 365 platform itself is the general name of it, and they renamed recently, about 3 to 6 months ago, the licenses to become Microsoft 365 Business, Premium, E3, E5, etc. Most people, well, I would have fact about 99% of people will be using it for email, and depending on which plan you have, you've also got the option to save the data in the cloud via OneDrive or SharePoint. And then now the proliferation of things like Yammer and Teams means that data is being shared and collaborated across that entire platform. So if the basic question is there data that needs to be secured? Yes, because now people are now sharing information via email, via Yammer, via Teams, more than they ever have done. So it does need to be protected.
And Darren, are most of those people that are then using this storage for data, is that replacing what we would maybe refer to as traditional storage on servers and things like that? Is critical data now finding its way onto 365 as standard?
Yeah, it is. And the people that, you know, when they look at their systems that need to be refreshed, is there a requirement for an on-premise server? Possibly not now because of the Office 365 features that's there. So they can look at migrating that information into SharePoint, as you mentioned. It can be fully cloud-based and stored. There's other businesses that look at hybrid models, whereas they still keep some of that information as an on-premise scenario, you know, on their physical servers. But when they've got other workers that are predominantly outside of the office space, you know, some of their information is within SharePoint, and some of them, like I said, they have more of like a hybrid scenario type of things as well.
Okay. So for us to be talking about the fact that Microsoft 365 maybe hasn't got the features turned on when it starts, that might be a bit of a surprise to people, because obviously when people buy into new software, they expect a level of security to come with that. Is there a reason why those things aren't turned on, Paul? Is it a case of they have to be configured in a certain way, or is it a sales ploy by Microsoft to make you buy the bigger packages? Is there a reason behind why it's not more secure out the box?
Yeah, the main reasons really behind it is a lot of problems that we've had over the years, not just from Office 365, is legacy applications. So out of the box, Microsoft last year decided to turn security defaults on, as what they call it, which is basically turning on like two-factor and bits and pieces to secure up more of the user side of it, which was a really good thing. The issue happened when they turn certain things on, like modern authentication, which would then stop old legacy applications connecting via IMAP and POP and bits and pieces like that. It would actually break certain third parties. Now, I do know that obviously the industry has to change and get better as it goes along, and I know third parties have been catching up with that. But until I think we get all the third parties on board with the way that modern authentication is going to be, there's always going to be an element of security risk on that side of it. So Microsoft, it's not that they're selling a product that is not secure, it's more they're selling a product that will work for you out the box. And then what you do is you buy professional services, or you have in-house IT managers, then look at that, use tools like Microsoft Secure Score, for instance, as a name drop, things like that. You can then look at your estate, look at what you can do to increase the security on it. We're not saying that it's not secure out of the box. You know, you can do password policies and all the other bits and niceties with it, but it's just there's so much extra that you can add in there with increasing licenses and obviously then tweaking the security around that. So out of the box, it's still a secure thing, but it's only as secure as what the end user is. And I think that, from me, when I look at any papers from any security company, they always go on the best things to do is secure up his password policies, two-factor authentication, which a lot of people find is irritation more than a helpful thing, and also education of users, explaining how, you know, this, that, and you know, how not to get credential harvesting. Look at, is that the right email, things like that. So a lot of stuff that we do when it comes out of the box as part of our basic setup for 365, we turn on certain things like branding of the company portals and things like that to make it, you know, make end users see that it's their portal. So we make it look like it's there. So if they do get a fictitious one that's like an attack for some reason, they can differentiate between their own portal and maybe a fictitious one. So loads of little things you can do, but there's so much stuff if you buy the licensing that it can increase to.
Okay. And James, when we're talking to our customers about this sort of process, what risks are associated then with 365? Are they any different to the normal cybersecurity risks we'd be talking about on a on-premise system or an alternative cloud-based system, or is there anything new here?
Well, the data obviously is held within Microsoft data centers around the UK and perhaps further with replication between them. So you would be forgiven to think your data is completely safe because it's within Microsoft data centers. But of course, if you didn't know that data from 365 is actually cached onto your local machine, so in your local Outlook profile and your local OneDrive folder. So therefore, it is secure up in Microsoft, but you still need to concentrate on the endpoint to make sure that that is as protected as possible. Because if you lose your endpoint, if you have your laptop or your desktop stolen, then that data is still available, cached as a local copy. Everything that Paul's talked about there, and he can probably jump in again on this, is that 365 security looks after 365. It's not a security strategy for all of your endpoints, your servers, etc. It looks after what data is in 365. So you couldn't move forward with a whole security strategy just based on the Microsoft 365 technologies. You have to have that layered approach that I think we've talked about before, about making sure the endpoint is covered, the server's covered, making sure you've got things like multi-factor authentication when logging into your machine, all that kind of stuff. So I've forgotten the actual question, Phil, but
I think you've answered. So in some respects, what my question was, is it something new? And I think what your answer is there is it's part of the same strategy, but it's a new element. As in, if you've got 365, don't think it's covered by your existing cyber security strategy. Make sure that element's covered as part of it.
Sounds a lot better than what I just said. Yeah.
I think it might be worth as well adding on to that, Phil, as well, in terms of the question of like how secure is the 365 element. Let's just think about this on the email only side for the time being. Obviously, we've seen this week release the information regarding on-premise Exchange servers and the patching that's needed for terms of that. So again, Microsoft have released a patch for that, and that's then for each individual business's IT department or third-party partner to make sure that patch is downloaded, installed, configured, and rebooted. Okay, Microsoft have released a security patch for it. In terms of the email-only element of 365, those kind of patches are already provided by Microsoft direct out of the box. It's their data centers, it's their hosting platform. They make sure that that element is done, so the end user kind of doesn't have to worry about that to an extent, if that makes sense.
So just to kind of clarify for anyone watching doesn't kind of follow that one, this is the Hafnium hack or attack, should I say, that's happened recently. Been quite a lot of coverage on it. And what we're really saying there is they have targeted the on-premise version of Microsoft Exchange, which controls obviously emails, because most people aren't patching. And I guess there's probably statistics. I don't know if anyone knows on top of their heads how often most businesses patch, but I think I've read that can be anywhere between sort of 3 months and a year in a lot of businesses, how often they roll them out. And this was a very fast attack, a kind of a 0-day exploit that happened very, very quickly. And that meant that people had to rush to patch. But because Microsoft 365 was automatically updated, at least we can say so far whilst we're recording this video, at least, because you never know what will happen. But those businesses have not been affected, those that are using the 365 kind of non-on-premise version of Microsoft Exchange.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to go back to you then, Paul, you mentioned a lot of things can be done. Obviously, I think for our customers, and also if there's anyone watching that looks after their own IT, where would you start? What would your advice be on the kind of the most basic steps to put in that aren't installed or need configuring straight away? What's going to have the biggest impact?
So one of the biggest impacts is actually training users. So this is not even a requirement for configuring anything as per se, but it's making sure that the end user understands what they're logging into, when they shouldn't click yes to certain things. If you do use like a multi-factor approach, make sure that when you get a request on your phone, make sure you're not allowing that multi-factor request, because putting all the technology in the world, if you go yes, I allow that authentication request, and it's somebody else doing it, they're into your account. So education, I think, is the first sort of point of call. The next things are making sure any admins on the Office 365 side are multi-factored anyway. Even if you're not going to use a multi-factored approach for your end users, make sure your admin user has a multi-factor on it. So then you're stopping anybody getting in the admin side of it. Security score. There's a tool that Microsoft use that have produced that you can look over your estate, run that, see what it actually comes back with, because it breaks down a full what you can do with what you have. So it doesn't matter if you've got the lowest possible license for 365, like we mentioned with just email plans. Run the security score and it'll tell you, enable security defaults, make sure this is done, that's done. So there's loads of little pieces that you can actually do, but using dedicated admins, multi-factor, stopping basic things like email auto forwarding. So if somebody does hack a user and creates an auto forward, so when an email comes, it automatically sends it out to the hacker's side email side of it, they can actually read your email coming in. If you stop those things, you're stopping that first initial sort of get in, start harvesting data out of it. So there's little things you can do, and those things are free as well. They're not, you don't have to pay anymore. Multi-factor now you can turn on using security defaults, and it doesn't require any further plans. Obviously there are certain things around that, like if you need text-based authentication, because we do find that end users don't want an application on the phone. And I think a lot of that needs to be addressed in the industry itself, to say, look, these device applications are nothing to do with snooping or what you're doing. It's literally helping us secure you. And a lot of businesses don't have everybody with mobile phones and things like that. You have your personal device. And if we can get through to everybody that all we're doing is putting an authentication client on, and it's just the same as like what your banks use, your bank's out spying on you. Yeah. Get that through to them. And I think multi-factor for admins, and just stopping silly things like automatic email forwarding if somebody does get harvested, and then just common sense. There's not enough of that, it seems, nowadays. Just simple things. Look at it. Does it look right? Spam emails, you can tell they look rubbish because the content within them's normally completely not English, no grammar within it. It's one of those. So just simple things like that, really.
Well, we've done a video recently, Paul, actually exactly about two-factor and making that clear of just how simple that is and non-invasive that is as well. So we should have that up either if they're watching this on the blog already, or if not, coming very soon. As well, you mentioned the Microsoft security score. I don't know if anyone else, how much experience everyone else has had of this, but I'm all right in thinking we can run that for people. We can show them what it is, but also not to be too alarmed. From the ones that I've seen, they come back very low straight away. Is that right? Sort of 20, 30%, and things like two-factor are a big chunk of the missing part of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, the thing is with the security score, it's based off what licensing you have. So if you've got a really high-end license, like an E5 or something that has everything encompassed, or a premium, Microsoft 365 business premium license, your score is going to be very, very low compared to somebody who's only got email-only plan. But it's not something to be worried about. What that score is, it's not to turn around and go, your estate's really poorly secure. It's this is what you can do to make it even better. So we've now made a decision, and I work with the sales guys with this when doing site surveys and stuff. I run off a security score if they've got Office 365 for them, and we actually break that down to show them what, if they come with us for support, or if not, they can go away to the third party and say, look, can we do this? But it just gives them a bit of an idea of, look, you bought this product and this is what you can do to make, more secure. And it's not, I don't think it's a scaremongering thing from Microsoft and a sales tactic per se with those bits and pieces, but it just gives you that data to go to boards and directors and go, look, for very minimal cost, we can increase all that security. So it's quite nice.
Okay. So obviously for businesses that are then looking at this and thinking, okay, I've not approached, I've not done anything about it. From a sales side of things, in terms of what they can buy and what they can do about it, James, Darren, what's your experience? Is there a way? Have we got anything that's sort of standard for people that gets them up to a certain level, or is it how long's a piece of string job and what do you want to achieve? How do we approach that from getting people from their standard install to a much more secure install?
Darren?
Yeah, do you want me to pick that one up? So we do have a bit of a matrix that we work with our customers that we can go through, and it essentially looks at, as Paul mentioned, what of these features are included within the Office 365. So, what is a basic one, what is a standard one, what is an advanced feature that's there. Again, it's identifying with the customer what license is required for that specific user. So let's just pick an example, as in someone that works within an office environment will need a full license of Office, maybe Teams, SharePoint, email services, and some of the other business functions that's there. But somebody that might just work in a warehouse only needs the email side of everything, because all they ever need is just an email account to send information to them from. So it's getting a good understanding then of which license plan is relevant to the person for their role. And then the next step of that is ensuring how do we then still make sure that everything is secured based on that basic standard advanced features list that's there. Again, depending on how secure the customer wants that to be. But also what you have to consider is then we can't just make the ones that have got the higher licenses, the business premium licenses, that all the features are included, secure, and forget about the exchange only licenses. So there's other add-ons and other features that we can include to make sure that still stays secured and prevalent as well. So I think just going back to that, is we have a document that we can sit and we can run through and kind of get an understanding of what they want to achieve. And then we can work out what licenses is needed and what the steps are to achieve that and make sure that they're fully secured.
Okay. And I think I've mentioned this in other videos. One of the concerns will always be when it comes to cybersecurity that we can keep adding layers and layers and layers. And at some point, there's a limit to people's budgets, obviously, and there's a limit to how far people feel they need to go. Just in this area, James, what are we talking? Are we talking this is a matter of, is it days work? Is it weeks work? If we take sort of I don't know, let's say a 30 user system and we want to secure that, what are we talking? Are we talking a huge project, or just it's a relatively small job?
It can be a relatively small job. It all depends on how secure you want to be and what licenses you've got. So how secure can you be? The consultative approach that we take, it should be said that we will never look at anything in isolation. So if we're looking at a Microsoft 365 security solution or a service, we'll also take into account what else is actually in place already, or what else could be in place. So it's never done in isolation. But if it's for a 30 user company, the consultative approach is free. That's me, Darren, and Paul with a bit of pre-sales to make sure we know what they want. Delivery time of a couple of days, I would say, maybe even less than that. So it's not a huge job. And it's one of those things that I think we've talked about in the past, that it's a little bit of money up front now, and it could save you a hell of a lot more money in the future if you get hacked, or if you have a problem with GDPR, etc., all those bad things that can happen that have financial implications. So it's a bit of an insurance, but it's not a huge job for most people, I would say.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I think Paul's touched on a lot of what my final question is, because you've talked a lot about obviously educating users and training, which I think in every time we talk about cybersecurity, that comes up hugely. So that aside, if we get our users up to scratch, we get our system updated and the features installed, is there anything else that anyone would need to do then to make sure that their 365 is safe and secure?
I think it's sort of proactive sort of maintenance, really. It's ensuring that the policies that you have created, for instance, if you're using spam policies or you're using like phish threat and things like that to keep the users forever guessing, making sure that they're always there, is making sure that your security is still in place, and then following as Microsoft increase more security things, running that secure score and stuff like that all the time, and making sure that you're still secure. And has anything changed over? It's a bit like having a credit rating, I suppose, on Experian. You check that when you want to have a loan, you want to check that, and things go up and down based on what's going on in the world. So if a new product comes out and it can greatly increase your security, what are the costing factors of that, and is that something that can be implemented cheaply? Or it's just keeping on the actual estate and making sure it's secure. And I think having like services like we sell to a lot of our customers to make sure that we're keeping that okay, and checking that there's no remnants if you have had a breach, making sure that we've gone over that and made sure the breach has been fully tidied up, and then working out what's happened and putting in procedures that will stop it in that place. But it's forever evolving and always expanding 365. So it's just making sure that you keep on top of it, really. And I think it is just constantly educate users when new threats come out and new ways that attackers use to try and gain your access to your data, is looking at that and going, right, guys, they're doing this now, and this is what we need to look at. So it's education first, then look at different products, and then maybe for some people upgrade the package you've got to get those extra features. I do tend to find the industry in a whole is always it'll be all right until it happens to us, and then they look at purchasing these new things to stop it happening again. Whereas hopefully in time, I think the industry will have to move to let's put something in place before it happens, and then a lot more threats will sort of disappear. But it's just that emerging threat problem that is always evolving. So yeah, it's just keeping on top of it.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, we've talked again every time we come across cybersecurity. We talk about a few things. One, about being awareness, which is exactly kind of what you're saying then, Paul. We need to, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing these videos, of course, is to try and get people to be more aware of what's going on, what the threats are, because it can be hugely complicated for people that aren't living and breathing it like you guys do. But ultimately, it's always evolving as well, and we obviously the attacks are always going to get more sophisticated, or in some cases less sophisticated in some respects, but more sophisticated in how they achieve their end goal, in terms of ultimately either stealing data or stealing money, which is typically what they're trying to do. So we need to keep up with it. Like you say, Paul, we need to review that on a regular basis and make sure there aren't new threats and therefore new features and new prevention for that's available to us. So brilliant. Right, as always, appreciate all your input, guys. It's been really good. Hope that's been really useful to people that are using Microsoft 365 and maybe weren't aware of just how unsecure or more secure it could be for them, with actually, from what sounds like, not a huge amount of work depending on what they want to achieve. So thank you, everybody, and obviously we'll be back soon with another video.
No worries. Cheers.